Good evening. Welcome everybody to Wednesday Night Live. I am so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be back at Wednesday Night Live. I know over the Christmas New Year period it was really sporadic, and I fully intended to have that back under control in January, and we had the 14-day Colt start, and we had a couple of days in between that, and then I had a 5-day intensive Raise the Bar clinic. So unfortunately, I just couldn't pull it off. I couldn't get the Wednesday Night Lives done in January, but here we are, pretty much, what is it, the 30th of January, so the very last Wednesday in January we're kicking off, and hopefully we are going to be all set to have them going all through February. There should be no reason why I can't get them happening in February, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to start getting back to you guys and doing Wednesday Night Live. So I will apologize for the state of my office. You'll notice that there's been a change of scenery. We did have the studio set up for Wednesday Night Live, but today, much to my excitement, I discovered that I can actually go live on my computer. So you couldn't do that before. You could only go live on a mobile device. And I was mucking around doing a different post today to advertise the Wednesday Night Live, and all of a sudden there was a go live button on the desktop, and I thought, oh wow, this is fancy. So we've got the desktop. We don't have the nice studio, but we do have probably a better computer, and I can actually see the comments and everything coming through. So hello, Karen. Hello, Ruth. Hello, Frankie. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you logging in and watching this Wednesday Night Live. So let's get straight into it. Tonight we are going to talk about 10 things we've learned from the Colt Starting Clinic. Now, the Colt Starting Clinic is a 14-day intensive clinic where participants start their own horses under saddle. So it's not me doing it. Yes, I used to take horses in, or I do take horses in for Colt Starting, and but what I found to be more effective was people doing it themselves, because then they got to be part of the entire process. They got to see what I was looking for, and really you learn so much from a Colt start. I mean, it's like one of those things everyone goes, oh, you don't understand until you've been there or until you've done it. And it is one of those courses. It's kind of like you don't really understand how much you're going to learn. I've had several advanced students now do the Colt start, and all of them have said that they would like to do it again, purely for their own learning experience. So they want to go out and get, maybe do somebody else's horse, or purchase a horse specifically to do the Colt start with, because you're just reading so much body language, and you're really immersed in it. We're doing 12 16-hour days, and it's a very small group. There's only about 4 to 6 people in the group, and so it's a high intensity course where you just learn so much over that 14 days, and it is fantastic. So I thought I would share with you guys what we learned over the 14 days from everybody, from all the horses, from what we were observing, etc., etc. Hi, Mummy. Good to see that you're logging in. I hope you're not too hot out there. And so, yeah, I've got 10 things that we learned from the Colt start, and let's get started. So the first one is that every horse is different. So I think we know this as a thing. We know that our individual horses have different personalities. We know that our individual horses relate differently. We know that colts are going to relate differently to geldings, are going to relate differently to mares. Older mares are going to relate differently to fillies, and et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. So you've got the physiological differences. And then you've got the nurture differences. So depending on whether they've been raised in a herd, or whether they've been raised on their own, or whether they've been a little bit spoiled, or whether they've been turned out in a huge mob to get, to live as a horse, and they haven't really had much human interaction. We had several of these horses. We had these kind of horses at the Colt start. So we had one off the track thoroughbred, so a lot of handling, but a job to do. We had a young-ish 5-year-old gelding that had been quite spoilt when he was a juvenile, and then had gone gone to the new owner, been sent away for restarting, and then due to injury was not able to be ridden after that restarting, and so he came back in to get restarted. And then we had a little mare that had been running in a herd of 12 mares and barely looked at for her entire life. She's 5 years old, never had a feet done, never had a teeth done. Don't need any comments about that, people. She's perfectly fine. Her jawline's fantastic. I actually am really looking for, I've actually owned the mare now. I'm really looking forward to taking her to our dentist to see what he says about her teeth and everything. She certainly conducts herself fine. Her hooves look fantastic. Her body weight's fantastic. We actually had a professional hoof trimmer at the course, and even she commented about how good her feet were for a horse that had never been touched. So yeah, we had sort of a horse that had been spoiled, a horse that had maybe been overdone a little bit from the time they were young, being an off-the-track thoroughbred, and then we had a horse that had been basically left alone. So we really had a good cross-section of different horses, and were able to learn a lot from the different you know, upbringing that they had and the different influences that they had. So first you've got personality, so let's call that nature. And physiology, which is nature. Then you've got what their experiences have been, so that's nurture. And then you've really got those two things or several things interacting to give you the place of where the horse is coming to you from in terms of his personality. So you might have a young gelding that's a little bit cheeky and wants to play. You might have an older mare that thinks everything's a waste of time and wants to go eat grass or breed. You might have a stallion that is thinking about mares. You might have all this sort of stuff going on. So every horse is different, and because of that, every horse learns differently and relates to the learning differently. So even though every single person at the Colt Start were given a workbook and we work to a schedule of a workbook, within those tasks, we're constantly changing and evolving the tasks to suit the horse and how they're relating to the handler and how they're relating to the information that's being presented to them. So we are adjusting it along the way. We're constantly adjusting along the way how we're actually achieving those things, even though we might have a fundamental exercise that we're trying to teach, and we might have a fundamental principle of training that we're trying to execute. Beyond that, we are chopping and changing and ebbing and flowing and really trying to make it as easy as possible for the horse and the handler to interact with each other. Every horse learns at a different pace. So you might have some horses that are like, yep, I've got it, no worries, give me the next task. And then you might have some horses, particularly the little mare that I have got now that I took on board, we were calling her the 5-minute mare, because really she only needed a very small session, a really short period of time, to be presented with a task, to think about a task, and then we found the best method for her was to actually turn her out, let her sit on it, let her relax on it, and then bring her back out again, and she'd be like, yep, I've got it, no worries at all. And some of the other horses were quite happy to have multiple repetitions and things like that. So every horse is definitely different, and that comes to the way that they learn, the way that they relate to the handler, the way that they react to the information that's being presented to them, and the way, the pace at which they are learning. The second thing we learned was that routine builds confidence. So none of the horses that were at the Colt Start had been in any kind of routine. You know, they had owners coming and going because of different work schedules. The little mare, as I said, she was just living in a herd. She had no routine whatsoever other than a lack of routine. I guess you could call that routine, a lack of routine. But, you know, they were being fed at different times, and they certainly were being worked at different times or handled at different times, etc., etc. And what we found was that the routine of the 14 days where, you know, every day we'd muck out the yards, every day we'd catch them, probably 4 or 5 times we were catching the horses and leading them out, doing a little bit of stuff, putting them back in the yards, feeding them at particular times, getting them back out again, making sure they had water, etc., 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 Well, those horses began to thrive on that routine, despite it being what a lot of people would say was a quite a substantial workload, if not, I wouldn't really call it a substantial workload, but definitely substantial in comparison to what the horses had been experiencing in the past. So, you know, we're doing 4 or 5, 3 to 5 sessions a day with these horses, where we're pulling them out, doing a little bit, putting them away. Sometimes we're pulling them out and putting them in a grazing paddock. Sometimes we're pulling them out and brushing them. Sometimes we're going on a walk, etc., etc. So there's variation in between the routine, so to speak, but these horses are locked in reasonably small paddocks and getting caught 4 or 5 times a day. So the routine of just getting caught all the time is certainly helping them get confidence in knowing what is coming up. So you think about at home, they're running around the paddock, they might be running around the paddock for 22 hours, 23 hours a day, and then all of a sudden you might catch them, and then you're tying them up or riding them or whatever, and then you're putting them back away. And then the next day you might not ride them, you might only brush them, and the next day you might not catch them at all, etc., etc. So there's a real fluctuation in what they can expect. Whereas when you're working these horses over such a concentrated period of time, they're really getting used to the routine, and they're going, oh, here's my owner. We're going to, you know, I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get halted. I'm going to get brought out of the yard, and I'm going to have a session. I'm going to have a session done, and then I'm probably going to get turned out for grazing, or I'm going to get fed, etc., etc. Now, I do have to stress that during a 14-day colt start, you know, you might be thinking, oh, 4 or 5 sessions a day, that's extreme. You're working these horses. None of these horses were tired. None of these horses were worked beyond their capacity. I'm very passionate about preserving the horse, and any of the, what would it be now? I've run about 5 colt starts with each about 5 people in them. So any of the 20 to 30 people that have done a colt start, I'm sure would be more than happy to tell you that the horses, we're not working the horses to a point of fatigue, and we're not working the horses to a state where they have to submit. Quite the contrary. The reason we're doing 4 or 5 sessions a day is because we're doing short sessions and giving them a break, as opposed to pulling them out and doing a 3-hour session, having a lunch break, and then doing another 3-hour session, which is very confronting and very fatiguing for a young horse that is not used to being ridden. Obviously, in a clinic situation, that is very common, and I myself run clinics like that. But I do it with my ridden horses who are used to that workload, and we're taking lots of breaks within the clinic itself, where we're standing around and having a roundtable discussion, etc., going for drink breaks and all that sort of thing. So the horses are definitely preserved. I'm talking about routine, building confidence in terms of being caught all the time and interacting with you, their owner, on a constant basis. It's the little things that make the big difference. So we have a very big portion of our training at the Colt Start is based on building a citizen. So in these sessions where we're catching the horse and we're preparing them to get saddled, we're grooming them, we're picking up their feet, we're making sure that they can accept a spray bottle, we're making sure they can accept a hose, we're making sure that they can lead, we're making sure they can do a water crossing. There's a large amount of a small group of things that is, so a large number of things that are seemingly insignificant to us that have horses that are, you know, going, and we probably don't pick out their feet every single day. We probably don't spray them with a spray bottle every single day. We probably don't tie them up every single day. We probably don't, you know, rug them every single day. But at the Colt Start, we were doing those things to make it normal, to make it routine, to be able to bond with the horses over grooming, and to get them, you know, by the end of the Colt Start, you've picked up their feet 60 or 70 times, which I'm sure your farrier or barefoot trimmer is going to thank you for that, because your horse is now used to having their feet picked up and handled, instead of coming every 6 weeks to a horse that never gets its feet picked up and they're arguing and struggling, etc., etc. So it's the little things that really contribute to your horse being a citizen, and citizens are typically easy horses to start. as opposed to a horse that's going to fight you on picking up his feet, or he's going to fight you on having the hose, or he doesn't want to stand still, doesn't want to get groomed, etc., etc. Those kind of horses that are a little bit challenging on the ground with your day-to-day, you know, worming, looking in their ears, opening their mouth, all that sort of stuff, those kind of horses that are struggling with those basic things are typically horses that are going to struggle with being started under saddle. So if you get that, I'm not saying one equates to the other, but every single thing counts when you're talking about getting on a horse for the very first time when he has never been ridden before. So number 4 is slow is smooth. So one of the things that human beings love to do is try and rush through things. Lateral bend, yep, got it. Lateral bend, yep, got it. Lateral bend, yep, got it. Yep. I've done it. And what we're not doing is investing in the technique or investing in getting that technique smooth and having the horse respond, not react. There's a very big difference to responsiveness versus reactivity. And what we need to be aware of is that if we can present things to the horse very slowly, and slow is relative. Slow is relative depending on the horse that you've got. So, you know, my big old pain horses who are pretty cruisy and you know, don't really worry about too much, slow for them is a reasonable pace. But slow for an Arab, or try and present that same pace to an Arab who are a lot more sensitive and a lot more responsive to your body language and what you're trying to present to them, they can be a little bit affronted by that. So slow is relative to the horse and the horse's personality. And again, I don't need a million comments about the different breeds. You know, I like Arabs, I like pain horses. I'm not saying one's better than the other. And in fact, sensitivity is going to work for you in some areas, and quietness is going to work for you in some areas, and sensitivity is going to work against you in some areas, and quietness is going to work against you in some areas. There's a real you know, it's not really even about pros and cons, because it's about these, everything can be a positive and everything can be a negative. It's yin and yang, that you can see the strengths and the weaknesses within the same traits, if you like. So slow is smooth. If you can get your horse responding very well to a particular cue, you can speed it up later. Speed doesn't mean anything. And a lot of the time we confuse reactivity with our horses being responsive or our horses being fast. And quite often I see a horse that's being reactive, and therefore what I mean by reactive is bothered, lack of confidence, explosive, confused, worried, etc., etc. It's a negative attribute for the horse to be reactive in that way, and yet you'll have someone say, oh, look how fast he does a hindquarter yield, he's perfectly fine. And I read the rest of the horse's body language and say, actually, he's not fine. He's not comfortable with what you're doing. You need to slow that down and get him confident, because if that reactivity is present on the ground, then it's going to be tenfold once you get under the saddle. So these are the kind of things that we need to look at, and slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Progress is the mother of motivation. So this one is typically for us humans. One of the things that I noticed at the Colt Start was, and it happens at every Colt Start, we've all been there and experienced it, those of us that have done the Colt Start, if a human being doesn't see progress, or worse still, sees a step back, if you like, or interprets something as a step back, we will be demotivated in the next day's training or the next session's training, because we think, oh, we've gone backwards, I'm going to have to redo all that thing again, and et cetera, and we get tied up in this lack of progress. So progress is the mother of motivation, and whilst that is relative to your horse, it's not as relative to your horse as it is to you, because humans are all about setting goals and moving forward and progression, and that motivates me because I got something good today, so I want to go out there tomorrow and see if I get something else good, and it keeps us you know, walking up the stairs, and it keeps us going to the gym when we start to see results, and it keeps us drinking liters of water a day when we start to see our skin get clearer, and all these sorts of things. If we see progress, it motivates us to keep doing what we're doing. So when we feel like there isn't progress within our horse exercises or training, then we start to lack motivation and we don't want to keep persisting. So our responsibility within this, in training, particularly Colt Starting, but absolutely within our own training, it's about finding the progress in the smallest of things, and even finding progress when you feel like you have gone backwards. That is our responsibility as practitioners and riders and horse trainers. It's our job to say, I feel like that didn't go so great today, but I know that I have to find the progress in that. So where's the progression? Where's the lesson? Where can I find progress in my experience today? And then that's going to keep you motivated to keep going out and doing what you're doing the next day. I forget what number we're up to. I think we're probably up to number 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 7. So we must do enough repetition to build confidence and enough new stuff to keep the horse interested. So even though horses don't really have a progress meter, so to speak, not the same as human beings do. We always have little goals, and we think, oh, I really want to get the horse, you know, I want to ride the trot tomorrow, or I really want to mount tomorrow, or I really want to go on the trail tomorrow, or whatever it is, depending on the stage of the Colt Start that you're at. What we set up at the Colt Start is a system where we're doing enough repetition every day so the horse is repeating. They're building their citizen exercises, and they're building the build the trust exercises and the ground exercises and things like that. The horse keeps repeating those every day. We repeat those every single day, multiple times a day. So the horse starts to go, oh, lateral bend, I know how to do that. Oh, turn on the haunches, I know how to do that. Turn on the fore, I know how to do it. Sideways, why didn't you say so? I know how to do that. So the horse gets confidence from understanding what it is that you're presenting to them. The horse goes, yep, got it, yep, got it, yep, got it, yep, got it. But by the same token, if you just took the same group of exercises and did the same thing every single day without raising the bar or expecting a higher level of quality out of those exercises, the horse would soon become disinterested, or maybe a little bit like a robot conducting those exercises. So what we do at a Colt Start is we do enough repetition to maintain the confidence, so the horse is saying, yes, I know, yes, I know, yes, I know. And then we introduce something new, so the horse goes, oh, this is interesting. This is something I don't know. This is something I want to interact with and see what it is that you're trying to help me understand. And so because we do that every day, that in itself becomes a routine. The fact that they're presented with a level of skills that they already know, and they're expected to conduct themselves at a higher quality, and the fact that there's something new being introduced, they start to go, oh, this is the routine within something new, if that makes sense. So we need to do enough repetition to build confidence and enough new stuff to keep the interest going and to keep the conversation going with the horse. Number 8, everything we do on the ground reflects under saddle. Everything we do on the ground reflects under saddle. I cannot stress that enough. I would keep repeating it, but it will drive you up the wall. But let me tell you, I'm here to stress that your horse that doesn't tie up, that's reflected under saddle in some way or another. Horse that doesn't lead properly, reflected under saddle in some way or another. Horse that doesn't float, reflected somewhere in the saddle. Horse doesn't pick up his feet, reflected somewhere under saddle. We think that these things are unrelated, but they're not unrelated at all. Everything that your horse has a resistance or a block or a lack of understanding or a lack of confidence, or whatever reason it is that your horse doesn't execute a particular thing, that thing will be revealed under saddle at some point. It may not be at the walk, it may not be at the trot, it may not be at the lope, it may be at the beach, it may be on the trail, it may be in competition, it may be in the dressage arena, maybe at the walk, maybe when you first put your bum in the saddle, it may be at the trot, maybe when you're leading the horse from one place to another. I don't know where it's going to show up, but it is going to show up under saddle, and your issues under saddle are helped or assisted by getting those ground things to a high quality level, good pace, good understanding, a good level of willingness on the horse's part, a good level of willingness on the rider's part, all that sort of stuff. Every single thing we do on the ground reflects under saddle, so fix it. If your horse doesn't stand still to get hosed, fix it. If your horse doesn't trail a load, fix it. If your horse doesn't want to get his rug on, fix it. If he runs over the top of you, fix it. All of those things are going to be reflected under saddle, and that's free knowledge. That's free knowledge that you can use tomorrow to improve your under saddle work by fixing anything that you think, half of you, if not, actually, those of you that are watching and you're thinking of something right now that your horse doesn't do under saddle, if you care to share, and I would love you to, because we've all got something. My horses aren't perfect. I know 100% where my horses need improvement. But if you're watching right now and you're thinking, oh, yeah, my horse needs work here, go ahead and put it in the comments. And that'll be you being able to write it down and make a little note. It's January 2019. Let's write it down. Let's put it in the comments. And then that's going to have you owning it, and that's going to have you working on it next time you work with your horse. So I'm very excited about that. If you care to share, go ahead and put in the comments what your horse is not good at. I know that Millie, my newest addition, I'm still working on her picking up her feet. She's not good at picking up her feet. Obviously, she's never had her feet picked up before. And yes, I am riding her, but I am very aware of trying to improve those feet getting picked up, because I know that somewhere along the line, that little bit of resistance, that little bit of worry about picking her feet up, that's going to come out under saddle somewhere. So I definitely need to get that fixed. Number 9 is, if you don't have the green light, don't move forward. It's that simple. I know that we generally are all working to a schedule. We're generally working to something that we're trying to achieve. Sometimes we're working towards a competition. Sometimes we're working towards just a, outing with friends, or, it might be just something at home. It might be something where, you go, I want to get the canter today, or I really want to, I really want to do this barrel course today, or I really want to do this test today. I just want to get the trot today. And for some reason, we want to keep up the pace, and we ignore the checklist. We go through the checklist. We go through the pre-flight check. The horse shows us that he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 or more red lights. And we go, I reckon he'll be all right. He probably won't be. Or he might be for that one ride. You might steal one ride off your horse, or 2 or 3 or 4. But again, if your horse isn't moving forward, or if your horse isn't doing a hindquarter yield, or your horse isn't going sideways or something, that will come out under the saddle. If you don't have the green light, the reason we go through these pre-flight checklists, the reason we say, if the horse doesn't bend, don't get on him. If the horse doesn't do this, don't get on him. If the horse doesn't do this, I think I lost count of how many checkoffs were in the Colt Starting book. And of course, in the Colt Starting book, we're being pedantic. We've got people starting horses who may never have done it before, who are not professional colt starters. We have some professionals or trainers come along and they're interested in learning the process, which is fantastic. But we also have a general rider who maybe have bred a horse or bought a young horse, and they want to go through the learning experience and the experience of starting themselves. So we've got every single one of those things on that checklist, so you're safe as you can be. So your horse is as safe as he can be during that starting process. If you don't have the green light, don't move forward. Now, I think I said that was number 9, and I've got 2 left on my piece of paper. So I've either got 11 or I skipped a number. That's fine. Number 9, or the second last one, pardon me, I do have a sore throat. I don't have any water. The second last one, if it is a struggle, leave it and come back. You may find that the horse has figured it out during their rest period, and then when you pick it back up again, they'll go, oh, yeah, I've got this now. We saw that a lot at the Colt Start. We're always trying to leave things in a good place. So whether it's circling or whether it's, you know, an exercise or whatever, we always try and leave everything in a good place so we can come back to it and we feel like the horse has got a level of understanding. And sometimes, you know, you're doing those exercises and it could be ridden or it could be on the ground and you're just on struggle street. The horse isn't listening, or you're not presenting the information correctly, and the communication's not there and you don't know what's going wrong. And really, what I do there in those situations, if it's a real struggle, and especially if I find myself getting frustrated or something like that, leave it. If you can, leave it somewhere nice, not necessarily within that exercise, but just do a little, you know, something they know, a hindquarter yield or a, pardon me, guys, a lunge circle or something like that. And then go ahead, quit them up, put them away, and then the next session, you may find that some kind of pennies dropped. We saw this a lot at the Colt Start. They were struggle. You get them out again for the next session and they go, oh, I figured it out. I know this circling. Sometimes they just need a pause in their brain and they're going to have it for you. So if it's a struggle, leave it and come back. There's nothing wrong with that at all. The final thing is probably the biggest thing, the hardest thing that is for us. And that is, if you've done everything you can, if you have got all the green lights, if you've done all the exercises, if you can hand on heart say to yourself, I've done everything I can to prepare this horse for riding or for this exercise, and I've done everything I can to get me as ready as possible and the horse as ready as possible, and I believe that we are both ready for this, you have to trust it. You have to trust yourself and you have to trust the horse. It gets to that point. I'm not saying blindly trust. I'm not saying, oh, I bred this horse when he was a baby and I know that he loves me and I know he's going to be perfectly safe. It's not about doing that. It's about saying, I've ticked every single exercise on my list. I've ticked every single pre-fright check on my list. I've done everything I can to make sure the horse is ready. I've done everything I can to make sure that I'm ready. I need to trust that I know what I'm doing. I need to trust my own skills, and I need to trust the knowledge and the education that I put into that animal. And I need to trust the partnership. I need to trust that what I've done is enough and that I'm going to be able to support the horse through whatever it is that I'm presenting to them as this next level under saddle. All of that applies under saddle as well, of course. If you've done the work at home and you're going to a competition, or you've done the work at home and you're going on a beach ride, or you've done the work at home and you're going in, you know, to the mountains. It's about being able to say, I've done as much as I possibly can at home. I've worked on our relationship. I've worked on our physical skills. I've worked on our ground exercises. I've got tools in my toolbox. I know what to do if the horse gets worried. I know what to do if I get worried, and I'm going to trust the situation. So that, everybody, thank you so much for watching, was 10 things that we learned from the Colt Starting Clinic. And thank you so much for sticking with me. Thank you so much for watching tonight, our Wednesday night live. Please, please, please send me topics that you would like to see me talk about. There's no topic too big or too small. I love getting your feedback. I love hearing about what you want to hear about. And really, if you're thinking about asking the question, other people are probably asking it as well. So go ahead and send it through, and I will see you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time for Wednesday Night Live. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great evening. Good night, everyone.